Hi there. Good afternoon. Hey, did everybody have a good day? All right, good. Well, we're going to end your day on a real bang here. We've got a phenomenal presenter and a great presentation. So I want to just quickly say hello. I'm Amy Quigley. I'm president of MyTex. MyTex is the Mass Innovation and Technology Exchange, which brings you FutureM every year. So we're thrilled to have you here. I'm really excited to announce our next keynote, Evan Greene. Evan is the CMO of the Recording Academy and the Grammy Awards. I had the pleasure of meeting Evan at a conference a few years ago, and I thought he would be a phenomenal addition to our lineup today. In his present role, Evan has transformed the Grammy brand from an annual event to a daily experience. He has repositioned the Grammy brand and more than quadrupled marketing-based revenue. Today, he will share the role data plays in experiential brand marketing and how data and social have contributed to the success of the Grammy brand. Shortly after his presentation, he'll take a Q&A, so feel free to stick around. And with that, I'd like to invite Evan to come up.
Hi, everybody. Before I get started here, let me share something.
Welcome to the 56th Grammy.
So that worked in run-through. So let's try. Good thing I always bring a backup.
Welcome to the 56th Grammy Awards. Music has the power to bring people together like nothing else in this world. Grammys!
Even if I tried, even if I wanted to, my love, she keeps me warm. And the Grammy goes to.
And the Grammy goes to.
And the Grammy goes to. And the Grammy goes to.
We've come too far to give up who we are. So let's raise the bar and our cups to the skies.
Get lucky.
Daft Punk, Macklemore and Ryan Lewis.
Unorthodox jukebox. Same trailer, different part.
Casey Musgraves.
Royal.
Holy Grail!
Woo! Yeah!
Dude, he said to me, come along and we'll do a jam on Long Tall Sally. I said, no, we've been there, we've done that. We should just make something up, and this is it.
I want to tell Blue that, look, Daddy got a gold sippy cup for you.
I got to make a record that I poured myself into and I'm so proud of.
France is really proud of these guys right now.
Everybody get up. Maybe I'm going down, maybe I'm going down, maybe I'm out of my mind.
I want to dedicate this award to my mother, Ma. I know you're watching. I hope you're smiling. I love you. Thank you guys so much.
First and foremost, I want to thank our fans, the people that got us on this stage. I love you guys.
We made the song originally just to give away for free, and so to be here now in this room with so many legends and people whose work I admire is a complete honor.
Back when I was drinking and using, I used to imagine things that weren't there that were frightening, and then I got sober and two robots called me and asked me to make an album.
You can call me Queen Bee, you baby, let me live that fantasy.
Welcome to the 56th.
Now, if I can get back to the PowerPoint, we'll be all set. So, the reason I wanted to open with a video is, first of all, I know it's been a long day, and was hoping to wake everybody up a little bit. Secondly, though, I thought it was really important to kind of underscore the difference a little bit between the Grammy telecast or the Grammy show and the Grammy brand. I work for the Recording Academy. The Recording Academy is a not-for-profit trade organization that was founded 57 years ago to improve the cultural condition of music and its makers. It's a mouthful, it's a pretty heady thing to say. And since then, we've produced a television show that has resonated around the world and captured imagination for the last 56 years. It's really become our calling card. And there's a distinction really between the show and the brand. The reason that the show is popular, the reason we had close to 30 million people watching this year was not because of the celebrities and the artists that were on stage performing. The reality is there's a lot of shows out there. There's a lot of music shows, there's a lot of award shows, and a lot of them use the very same artists as we do. Now, I think we do it a lot better, and I think there's a lot more meaning to what we do, but I see the job as marketing. I see the job of marketing and branding as getting people to 8 o'clock. I see the job of the show as keeping them to 11:30. And what I want to talk to you about today is what we've done at the Grammys to really build a sense of authenticity and a sense of trust, and how we've built that brand over the course of the last decade or so to the point where I think we've created a significant amount of excitement, anticipation, and amplification as we head towards the Grammy telecast. Now, the Recording Academy is, like I said, it's a not-for-profit trade organization. We do a lot more than just the Grammy Awards, right? A lot of people, when they hear what I do, they say, oh, well, that's great. You must have 11 months off. or you spend 364 days preparing for that one. Neither of which is really true. As an academy, we are dedicated to putting music programs back in schools, advocating on Capitol Hill for artists' rights and intellectual property protection, charity and philanthropy. We have an awards department, obviously. We're a membership organization of 20,000 music professionals. So there's a lot more to it than just the Grammys, but the question is, how do we build credibility, how do we build trust, and how do we build a relationship with our social ecosystem? So if you can, certainly this isn't a revolutionary concept, especially for the people in this room, but the idea that brands that establish trust really set themselves apart, I think, is important to note at the top of my talk today. It's really become a connected world, right? I think that there's never been more connections. Connections have never been more important. Connections between friends, fans, and followers. Connections between artists, celebrities, and fans. And frankly, there's a two-way connection and a two-way relationship between brands and consumers. And I think the thing that drives that relationship is ultimately the idea of authenticity, right? So authenticity, I think, is the cornerstone of trust, and trust is ultimately what you need to build an engaged community. And if you build an engaged community, you have you have an army of people that really buy into the culture that you're trying to communicate, and ultimately you create a series of brand evangelists. So admittedly, the Grammys were late to the party when it came to social. We kind of, for a lot of reasons that I won't bore you with during this presentation, because it would take the better part of the evening to explain to you why a traditional organization like ours had a hard time embracing the idea of two-way communication and social media. But we eventually got there. And as we were putting our overall plan together and putting our overall platform together, we kind of stumbled upon this universal human truth. And it's not just a human truth about consumers or fans. I think it's a universal truth for people in general, for communication in general. And that is that people are really looking for two things, right? They're looking for discovery, they like to learn new things, and they're looking to be part of a community. And we found that if you can really enable the idea of discovery, you empower shareability, which I think is central these days. And once you've done that, you lead to building an engaged community, a robust community, a community that is interested in what you have to say. So for the Grammys, when we had a show that was resonating. We had a show that a lot of people were interested in watching. But when it went beyond that, we had a hard time figuring out what we really stood for. What does our brand stand for? What does the Grammy represent, right? I think we had to sort of take a step back. we had to start from square one and try to figure out who we are and frankly who we wanted to be when we grow up. And I think brand promise is critical, and I pulled two just for the sake of this conversation that I think really that speak to being truthful and being authentic. First is Virgin, to be genuine, fun, contemporary, and different in everything we do at a reasonable price. I think they've reasonably achieved what they've set out to do. And Apple, take out the complexity and make everything simple enough so that everyone will be part of the future. I think clearly Apple's delivering on its brand promise. So back in the day, there were really four ways to communicate, right? It was TV, print, outdoor, and radio. And if you wanted to, and demographics were in a lot of ways overlapping and homogenous, right? There wasn't a huge amount of difference between reaching people of varying demos. And so and it was all about push messaging, right? You push your message out, and if you wanted more amplification, you heavied up on TV or print or outdoor or radio, et cetera. Well, nowadays, it's not only a connected world, but the number of options out there are overwhelming, right? So how do you maintain consistency? How do you maintain a credible voice when the marketplace is so fragmented, when there are so many channels, there's so many platforms, there's so many different ways to connect and to communicate, and especially when you have so many pockets of consumers, so many different levels of interest, and so many people that sort of exist in disparate spaces. Those are some of the questions that we've been grappling with, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you on a bit of a narrative journey of how the Grammys kind of figured out who we are, what we stand for, where we've been, where we are, and a little bit into where we're going. So the Grammy brand really represents the Recording Academy. And when we drilled it down to really try and identify all the things that we stand for, and I don't know if you can read all of those bubbles, but it just sort of gives you a sense of all the things that we do, all of the things that I mentioned earlier, advocacy, philanthropy, charity, all those things. It's really impossible, when you think about it, to come up with a unifying brand vision that encapsulates all of that, especially when, let's say, our advocate on Capitol Hill is speaking to legislators about hopefully a new piece of legislation that enhances artist protection and IP protection and actually gets people paid for making music and changes some of those laws. Well, he's not waking up every day saying, God, I really wonder what marketing's doing today. I really want to integrate with what Evan and the marketing team are doing because it has an impact on my daily life. Just to the contrary, we're not an organization where we sell a product necessarily, where everybody gets behind the idea of this product and tries to sell as many units across retail shelves as possible. We represent an idea, we represent a philosophy, we represent a level of achievement, and the Grammy brand has become the biggest brand in music and arguably the biggest brand in the history of music. And so we had to sort of figure out what we stood for and what our goals and objectives are, right? So I can't be all things to all people, and marketing can't be all things to all people. But under the heading of a rising tide lifts all boats, if we focus on our brand on a daily basis, right? If we've sort of accidentally built this massive brand by virtue of a single television event held once per year. So if we took a proactive brand management approach, the thought is we can become certainly a far more powerful and impactful brand. And so if we can take the idea of this Grammy brand, we can promote it and we can find a way to deepen our relationship with consumers and fans across the board, we're going to make everybody else's lives easier. That means when our advocate goes on Capitol Hill, as an example, to meet with legislators, there's going to be a greater affinity, a greater familiarity, and a greater comfort with our brand. When our Grammy Foundation goes out and tries to raise money to put more music programs in schools, or to put more kids in Grammy Camp, or one of our other programs, people are going to feel more familiar, and the Grammy brand is going to seem that much more comfortable and familiar in their lives. So, in terms of our our objectives, right? We have to be tireless and passionate brand stewards. We have to increase our relevance and resonance throughout the year. We want to increase the prestige and the integrity of the brand, expand our reach far beyond one particular night in February, and personalize and humanize what we do. So now that we've identified kind of what we do, and now that we've identified who we are, and now that we've identified what our goals are, what do we do with that? How do we truncate that into a relatively simple ethos, a relatively simple message? Well, our brand promise is a little bit weighty, but we want to touch people's lives through music and reinforce music's relevance. Great. Now what? So now that we've figured out what our promise is, we drilled that down to our brand position, which ultimately becomes the backbone of everything that we do. It's 2 words, it's not revolutionary, but it really does serve as the core of our DNA. And everything that we do always has to come back to the idea of celebrating music. So now that we know what we stand for, now that we know where we're going, now how do we go about establishing trust? Well, as I touched on, it's really about establishing a 365-day-a-year strategy that's consistent, that we can constantly replenish, and we want to surround the music conversation. I'll get into that in just a moment. But it's really about an evolved marketing communication strategy. Some of the key things that we focus on are partnerships. Because we are a not-for-profit organization, the budget for the Grammys or the Grammy brand is far smaller than you'd ever think that it really is for a brand of our globally iconic nature. So we work with partners on a lot of campaigns that have borrowed equity. We bring a halo effect from the standpoint of music, and we're able to get into channels and avenues that we would never be able to penetrate on our own. Social and digital has become a huge part of our communication strategy, of everything that we do. I touched on earlier the idea of shareability. What we do has to be shareable from day one. If it's not shareable and it's not engaging, we jettison it. And content. Content, we've invested a considerable amount on building a content infrastructure and using content to help tell our story. So now that we have all of this, and now that we sort of have our strategy and we kind of know where we're going, now it's time to really figure out how we get there. And one of the key things, I think, social is evolving, and I think we can all agree that social is becoming pretty mature. But the area that's still the Wild West in a lot of ways is analytics and measurement. And I think certain companies and certain agencies are getting better at it. I don't think anybody's fully cracked the code. We are constantly monitoring and constantly looking to get better at what we're doing and how we do it. But the questions are also getting a lot more sophisticated, right? It used to be about aggregation and tonnage. How many Facebook friends do you have? How many Twitter followers do you have? Well, now we're asking questions like, what's our share of voice across platforms? What are people talking about? How are they talking about us? How are they engaging with us? What are some of the keywords they're using? Is there a way that we can seamlessly be part of these conversations? How do we increase our organic search? How do we create a bubbling up environment and atmosphere so the Grammys are easier to find? What's the optimal content mix? Meaning, when we talk about creating videos and putting content programs together, how many videos should we be posting? Should we be teasing? How much is enough? How much is too much? How much is not enough? And frankly, which videos are we producing that are becoming more engaging, and why? How do we engage socially from a posting standpoint and from a messaging standpoint? And how do we create more dynamic messaging? And of course, what's going on during the Grammy telecast itself, right? We are literally monitoring and analyzing in real time so that when we have a massive explosion of a moment, right, we can now take advantage of that, amplify it, and be part of the conversation. So for example, this past year, if any of you saw the Grammys, if the lights were on, I'd ask you to raise your hand about who watched the Grammys this year. But there was a performance by Kendrick Lamar and Imagine Dragons. That became sort of the conversation point or the water cooler moment of the Grammys this past year. At our height, there were 172,000 tweets per minute during that performance. So when we start to see amplification like that, we want to get into that conversation, we want to promote it, we want to be part of it, and we want to basically take advantage of what's going on in real time. And then we also had to ask ourselves, who's our audience, right? Is our audience only who Nielsen is telling us is watching the telecast? Or does it go deeper than that? Do we want to think about psychographic modeling? So I talked a little bit earlier about the fact that there's all these disparate pockets, and it's more challenging to reach people in all of these different areas, right? You can reach people through content programs. There's partnerships and borrowed equity, above the line, below the line media, blogs, fan sites, etc. But when you can start a conversation or promote a conversation, and that conversation starts to get passed along between all of these seemingly disparate circles, when those circles start to overlap and they start to become concentric, that's where real engagement happens. So when we want to engage and we want to have that kind of a conversation, we did a fair amount of analysis of our own communication, and we found that there was a tremendous amount of conversation going on about music in general and about the Grammys in particular. But it was all disjointed. There were various different conversations that didn't intertwine. There were, people saying the wrong things, and I don't mean, people saying bad things about the Grammys. They're certainly welcome to say, we've heard, the Grammys suck, it's a meaningless conspiracy, I hate the Grammys, this artist didn't win, this artist shouldn't have won, that artist that's all fair. I mean, we live in a two-way communication, two-way conversation society these days, so that's fine. I'm not talking about editing or monitoring the conversation. What I'm talking about is arming people with the right tools to have the conversation, right? So we have 12 chapters. So if you think of us like the NFL, we have 12 teams in the biggest music markets around the United States. They each have their own Facebook page. Well, these Facebook pages were completely disparate. The vibe, the tone, the spirit, were all, overlapping and intersecting, and it didn't really make sense. And our employees and staff were having conversations that were not really cogent, and they had the wrong hashtags and the wrong URLs, and so we created a playbook where we basically gave everybody the rules of the road and gave everybody the same information. And then we took it a step further and we created what we call our social media Bible, right? It's not the prettiest piece of creative that I'm going to show you today, but what it is it's a listing of all of our proper URLs, all of our hashtags, and we service this out to all artists, all media, all publicists, and all management. So that when they want to talk about the Grammys, or if a journalist wants to write an article about the Grammys, they're at least directing people to the right place, and the conversation can all be going down the same road. And then what we do is we post that and service it to all of our friends, fans, and followers across our social ecosystem. So at least everybody's using the right tools and everybody has the right opportunities to be part of the same conversation. So what's at stake, right? I think that, if you are authentic and you create trust, I think fans and consumers will give you a pass if you get it wrong sometimes. I think we've all made mistakes as marketers. However, if you take people for granted, if you take your audience for granted, this is what happens. And I think that is probably the most profound thing that can happen in today's marketplace. Because if you become unfollowed, that's the same as becoming irrelevant. People don't, there's no letter writing campaigns anymore. No one's going to call the CEO of the company. They're just going to turn away, right? And once someone turns away, it's almost impossible to get them back. So we like to have a consistent conversation on a daily basis, right? We like to talk to people consistently. Now, all we're trying to do, it's very simple. The concept is simple. And the concept is simply that we want to create more engagement and create more levels of interest, more points of interest, and find different ways to make the conversation more interesting. So, I don't know if you can read that, but in the center, that's a copy of a tweet that we put out during the show this year when we saw Imagine Dragons and Kendrick Lamar going crazy, right? We want to fan those flames. Same thing with Jay-Z and Beyonce or Daft Punk, but then we also, at different times of the year, just drop in little pieces of trivia, or did you know, or let's give you a historical perspective on what happened on this date, X number of years ago. The other thing, I don't know if that's, yeah, so the other thing that we did this year, we were the first award show to institute live GIFs backstage. And the goal in doing this is really to give people more to talk about and give people behind the scenes input, behind the scenes access, behind the velvet rope access. Another way that we amplify, as I touched on earlier, is partnerships. And each one of these partners have been chosen for a very specific reason, because they allow us permission, they give us permission to enter certain channels that we could never get into on our own. So, for instance, MasterCard, I don't know if any of you heard Raja's presentation this morning. Raja's the CMO of MasterCard. MasterCard's been a partner of ours for many, many years, and a couple of years ago they came to us and they said, listen, we are expanding the idea of priceless to a new concept called Priceless Cities. We're launching in LA. What should we do? How do we do it together? So together we built an event with Bon Jovi. We brought him to the back lot of Paramount Studios for the LA market, and then we streamed it and made sure that everyone had access to it. We also work with partners like Pepsi, right? Pepsi's obviously been playing in the pop culture world for a very, very, very long time. And what we would never do is sell a category, right? You're never going to see the album of the year category brought to you by X brand. But I think we got a little bit clever here, and what we did is we took arguably one of our most exciting categories, Best New Artist, and we worked with Pepsi to build a content program, and we chronicled the experiences of our Best New Artist nominees from the night of nomination all the way through to the awards performance themselves, or to the awards night themselves. And just on our YouTube page, I mean, we've sort of been reinforced that we've been doing some things right. Just on our YouTube page, this program alone delivered almost 2 million views. The Grammys are also, the Recording Academy, I should say, is also really heavily involved in working with emerging artists that are seeking to find their voice in the music industry and kind of figuring out where they fit. So we built a platform, we built a music discovery platform on SoundCloud called Amplifier. We worked with our partner Hyundai to really expand our message. And what it was is it gave emerging artists the opportunity to upload their music and have very, very well-known, world-famous artists listen to their music, and if they like it, they'll tweet it out or post it to their social ecosystems. And the artists that got the most amount of amplification were the ones that won, mentorship opportunities, opening slots at festivals, music video, mentorship sessions with some of these very same artists. So we used everyone from Linkin Park to Hunter Hayes, Ariana Grande, Kendrick Lamar, David Guetta, an artist by the name of RZA, Ozzy Osbourne, Snoop, and the list goes on. We also, it's really important to us at the Grammys. We're not in the business of choosing the digital platform or making recommendations about the platforms that are going to be successful in the future. But if you remember what I said before, we want to be part of the digital music conversation, and we want to help surround that digital music conversation. So there should be Grammy playlists on Pandora, on Spotify, on RDO. There should be, you should be able to find the Grammys on iHeart, on iTunes Radio, Shazam, etc. We take an agnostic view because, again, it's really important to us to literally be where music is happening. About 6 years ago, we pioneered, this was the first time this was done for an award show. We called it Grammy Live. Since then, a number of other award shows have done it, and they have various names for it. But we created an interactive, streaming, participatory experience where we took fans behind the velvet rope as we built Grammy Week. We took them behind the world famous, the world famous Music Cares Person of the Year tribute, where we would honor people like Springsteen or McCartney. If any of you are familiar with the world famous Clive Davis party, that's now an official Grammy party. So we take people behind the velvet rope there, the Grammy red carpet, backstage, etc. And we capture VOD all week. And then on Grammy Sunday, we go live. And I'll share some of those numbers with you, but the engagement has really been tremendous, and it really gives people the opportunity to really focus and see something that they don't have an opportunity to traditionally see. Many of you may remember that, that years ago, social media was supposed to kill television. Well, it actually turns out that didn't happen. Turns out that social media is actually additive to television because it gives you immediacy. It not only allows you to discover something new, but it also allows you to share with your community. So we also want to be on the ground at festivals. We don't want to tell you who to listen to. We don't want to tell you what's cool. We don't want to tell you what to wear. We don't want to tell you what you should or shouldn't do or who you should or shouldn't follow. We simply want to be, as I said, where music is happening. So we're on the ground. We're live tweeting. We oftentimes set up lounges backstage at Coachella, Essence, Winter Music Conference, South by, Lala, Bonnaroo. Literally capture content, just have a conversation with artists. Sometimes we'll give over our Twitter account and let them tweet on our behalf. And so literally wherever something meaningful is happening, we want to be there. And you know, the Marketing 101 states that it's really all about consistent reinforcement of a positive brand image and a positive brand message. And we think about that a lot, and we always look for new ways to do that and to engage. As I get to the final kind of third, I guess, of my presentation, I'm not sure where I am on time, I want to take you through a bit of a case study on Grammy advertising. And why did I put this image up? Because this is an image that when it was presented to me about 8 years ago, screamed to me that we have a big problem, right? When you take the most prestigious icon in music and you do that to it, it tells me that we have completely lost control and that we don't know what we stand for and that we don't know where we're going. And it's really about, you know, slug a message in, make it two-dimensional, and don't put very much time, thought, or effort into who we are or what we stand for. So I partnered with Chiat Day. For many of you who know Chiat Day, in my opinion, I think they're one of the best shops anywhere. And together we used the Grammys' 50th anniversary as an opportunity to reposition and reframe people's perceptions of who we are. And it really, you know, using all of the work that I've shared with you up until this point, and not all of it, because some of it came after this, but you know, the path that I've been sharing with you is basically what I shared with Chiat Day. And together we came up with an idea that really was about honoring the past 50 years and paying homage to the heritage that's got us here, but using this moment in time as the intersection, as the launch point for what the next 50 has in store for us. And so we juxtaposed great artists like Frank Sinatra and current superstar at the time, still current superstar, Justin Timberlake. And now let me show you a spot that I really love. It's 7 years old, and I still think it holds up today.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. Stole many a man's soul of faith. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name. Oh yeah. I was puzzling you with the nature of my game. Ah yeah. Get on down. Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, that was the Grammys' kind of reintroduction to the consumer marketplace in a major and a serious and a visceral way. There were a lot of artists used in that spot. There were over 90 artists that we used. They bought in so heavily to what we were doing, they all gave us their likenesses to use gratis. That doesn't happen. The Rolling Stones also gave us that song, Sympathy for the Devils, probably one of the most iconic rock and roll songs of all time. And you know, if I had told you what it would normally cost to license that song, it's a pretty jaw-dropping number. They not only gave us that song, they gave us access to their entire catalog to use for free in order to build this campaign. They became that focused and that passionate about what we were doing and about what we were trying to communicate to the market. 50-second show. This was 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. This was really the tipping point for us when it came to social media and creating that unmistakable connection, that visceral connection with fans. This was a campaign called We're All Fans. This was the first campaign ever that was constructed 100% out of social media components that were uploaded and opted in by fans. And so we basically gave people the opportunity to sing their favorite Lady Gaga, or not their favorite, but sing Poker Face, upload it, and we pulled in all of those videos, we pulled in tweets, Flickr photos, etc., and we basically built an entire campaign. This was the Lady Gaga spot that I'm going to show you. We built the entire campaign out of these consumer-driven sort of UCG components, and let me show you the spot. Oops. UGC I meant, not sorry.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas Place. Hold them and I'll give you baby, stay with me. Can't be mine, no, we can't be mine. Hold her place. She's gotta love nobody.
Sorry about the buffering there. Something amazing happened when we ran that spot. The spot was finished a little bit early. We had about 2 days before CBS could put it on air. And so we did something at the time that was, that was not very traditional, which was we said, let's break the spot online, right? We were so excited about it. The spot was too good. We didn't want it to sit for 2 days before it could make it on broadcast. So we posted it. And something amazing happened. Lady Gaga posted it. She basically posted, she did one post about it, and people started to see themselves. They started to watch it, and they started to see themselves in this piece of Grammy advertising. So they started tweeting about it and posting about it. And we had such a flood of awareness, and we had such a flood of interest in this particular spot that we literally, YouTube is far more sophisticated now than they were back then, but we choked the counter on YouTube and froze it. Right? Within about, I think, 24 hours, we had well over 1 million views. And that at the time was extraordinary on a piece of advertising, right? Since then, that spot has done close to 4 million views, right? And so that really represented to us that there is something really amazing that you can tap into if you do it right. And we've never really looked back from that point. This year's campaign, we took it one step further and we said, you know what, let's have a little bit more fun with it. Music does something to all of us. Music unleashes us. Music makes us laugh, makes us cry, makes us giggle, makes us move, makes us shake, makes us dance, right? And so we used artists that we all know of, but we also wanted to illustrate the power of music. And this became incredibly shareable. I'm going to show you a couple of pieces of film here, but this became incredibly shareable. The pass-along value was unbelievable, and the engagement that we got from this was really tremendous. So we started the campaign with that spot, which you call our anthem spot, and it really just set it off right because it had the right amount of energy. And then we sort of layered in some humor. And again, all of this is being filtered out for the first time through social with the goal of having people engage with it and share it. So this video is also corrupt, so I'm going to show it to you this way.
I got the eye of the tiger.
brighter than a lighter, 'cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar.
So this was that guy's very first commercial ever. He showed up and we just saw him and we're like, that's the guy we have to use. Next, what we did is we basically went on the street. We did man on the street with people. And we put the camera on. And we played some music. And we showed viscerally what music does to all of us.
You, I need your love. I've got my heart locked away, locked away. I was born for the limelight. My rhythm was a heart.
So, you know, it's fun because, you know, these became Instagram videos, right? So beyond just the traditional above the line and maybe we do some below the line, we look to, we look to utilize as many different platforms as we can. And I'm running short on time, so I want to show you one more piece of film here. We wanted to show what music does to people that are completely unsuspecting, right? So this is a bit of a case study. We took Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, we put them on a bus in New York with some unsuspecting consumers or unsuspecting commuters. I don't know, maybe some of you have seen this because the video is done well over 4 million views.
In today's world, we have such an abundance of on-demand content on so many different devices, it's hard to grab a viewer's attention. So how did we make the Grammys a must-watch? We brought the Grammys to the people. Celebrating how artists can unleash each and every one of us, even on your commute. Enter Grammy-nominated artists, Macklemore and Ryan Lewis.
Stay on my craft, stick around for those pounds. I do that to pass the torch and put on from my town. Trust me, I'm my I-N-D-E-P-E-N-D-E-N-T. Hustling, chasing dreams. I was 14 with the 4-track busting. Halfway across that city with the...
With just one single tweet, the video blew up, all without a dime spent in paid media.
Macklemore and Ryan Lewis are going to perform at the Grammy. They surprised some unsuspecting fans on a bus.
All in real time, not actors. Everybody's real. It's an ad campaign for the Grammys.
Hey, have you seen that new Grammy promo where rapper Macklemore gets on a public bus? Turns out might not have been the best idea.
The stunt became the Grammys' most shared video ever, reaching influencers from Lithuania to Brazil to Thailand. Fans spent over 7 million minutes watching the video. In the end, we didn't just unleash buzz. We increased viewership, smashed records, and helped make the 56 Grammys the most social telecast of any kind ever to date.
So that last stat I have to correct. We were 7 days before the Super Bowl this year, right? Every 4 years we have to move 2 weeks up because we get out of the way of the Winter Olympics. So this was one of those years. So we're normally the week after Super Bowl. This year we were the week before Super Bowl. So we cut this together the week, the week after the Grammy Awards before the Super Bowl came up. So we were the largest social event in the history of television for 7 days. Now we're number. Now we're number 2, but I'll take second place to the Super Bowl anytime. So as I wrap up here, I just want to give you a couple of stats. You know, what I hope I've been able to convey to you is that there's a defined strategy consistently applied. So, excuse me. So what are the results? How did we do? Well, this year, from a telecast standpoint, from a rating standpoint, we had almost 30 million viewers. We were up in all demos across the board, second largest audience in over 20 years. Now, again, you know, I don't believe that that's an accident. I don't believe that that's only because we have big celebrities and big stars on the show. I believe it's because of the relationship, the respectful relationship that we've created with our audience. Grammy Live, the interactive streaming initiative that I shared with you. This year on Grammy Sunday alone, we had almost 4.8 million viewer sessions and over 905,000 uniques. And from a social standpoint, this year we had over 34 million social interactions on Grammy Sunday, 99% positive sentiment, 199 top Twitter trends, and as I shared with you during the Kendrick Lamar and Imagine Dragons performance, over 172,000 tweets per minute, and our social ecosystem has now grown to well beyond 6 million. So as I close here, I really like this slide, and the reason that I wanted to share this with you, and the reason I wanted to end on this, is to really underscore a point that when you see the look at the Grammys as sort of that little sliver of ice that's sticking up above the top of the surface, right? And the message is, or if there's one, if there's one thing that I'll leave you with, is that oftentimes the things that look the easiest are the things that took the most amount of planning, strategic forethought, effort, and collaboration. So I appreciate your attention. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. I hope you've had a good day, and thank you very much.
So for those of you that would love to ask Evan a couple of questions, he's been happy to stick around for a few minutes, so just either step up to the mic or stand up and we'll take your questions.